Institute, Vermont. Right here we're in a pretty boggy, swampy area. Here's the river running, you just saw her flowing. This is where we find our next poisonous plant that we're going to discuss. It's called the False Hellebore. It's also known as the American White. Other names are the White Hellebore or the American White Hellebore, but most commonly it's known as Hellebore or False Hellebore. We're going to take a look at this plant because it has some pretty potent toxins in that have been fatal many times over. It's Hellebore. Let's take a good look at this plant. Now these leaves are quite large. See, put my hand here. Okay. Now this is a small plant right here. All right. They can grow up to 6 feet tall. Commonly though, they're usually found between 2 and 4 feet. It is a perennial. Grows in swampy, boggy areas. Loves to have its feet wet. Now let's take a look at that leaf. Okay, very smooth. It's not hairy. There's no serrations at all. Very, very strongly ribbed. Large and drooping. All right, notice how those leaves curve and bend. And you'll notice that they spiral up the stalk so that that leaf comes off the back side of the stalk. The next one comes off the right side. The next one comes off the front here. Alright, they spiral off the stalk as they go up from bottom to top. All the way to the bottom, where you have a single stem coming straight up out of the ground, and you'll notice the leaves start very early on the stem and then continue all the way up the stem to the top. Now the stems on these are pretty sturdy. All right, they're not hollow, and so they are quite rigid, and they are smooth all the way around. There's no hairs. Sometimes they can have a slight texture, but there's no ribs on the stem. And you'll notice the leaf comes off of the stem all the way around it on one side. See that? And as you can also tell, the slugs this time of year when the rains come love to eat this stuff. There's a nice plump one right there. Actually, there's quite a few all over these Hellebore. Another thing we want to look at with this is the flower. Alright, now the flower, they can come out, depending on the area, between May and all the way through July. Now let's see if we can get a close-up of the flower here without it blurring. And you'll notice they're star-shaped flowers. See how they're green? Sometimes they can be yellow and then turn green. And on the ends of the flowers they have the pollen spikes sticking up. They come off of stalks. Flower stalks bow off just like the leaves off of the main stem. They come out, and then they have the drooping or erect stalks. See, the top one goes straight up, filled with flowers. Oops, I lost it. And you'll notice the slugs even like the flowers. Interestingly enough, slugs can eat all kinds of poisonous things that we cannot, and yet we can eat the slug. The False Hellebore can grow in large stands together, alright? So you can find huge mats of this growing. But you can also find just small clusters as well. Alright, like I said, this is a perennial. It does come up every year from the same root. Now,
One thing that's important to know is that this contains some very toxic alkaloids that slow the heart rate dramatically. Alright? This plant contains alkaloids that, if consumed, can give you a heart attack by way of heart failure. So don't mistake this plant for anything else. Some people in the early spring mistake this, as it's coming up, for poke greens and consume it and kill themselves or their families. So make sure you learn this plant. You can positively identify it in all of its phases of life and avoid it. Again, it's a beautiful plant that grows in the swamp bog areas from New England all the way down to Georgia. It can grow all the way out to Wisconsin, down to Illinois. So it's got a very large range. Anywhere you find wet, swampy areas in those regions, you can easily find the false hellebore.
The Ways of the Wild Institute in Vermont. And that is a short video clip on the false hellebore. Right? Again, a beautiful plant. As you can see, it's a food source for slugs, but also for a lot of other creatures. Just not for us. Make sure you avoid this plant in your edible and medicinal excursions. If you want to learn anything else about the ways of the wild, medicine ways, native ways of living in the outdoor regions of the world, look me up, waysofthewildinstitute.com. Be well and happy.